Greetings, everyone, and welcome back as we journey into the blue sky. My name is Patricia.
My name is Arun.
And today we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting film, especially for those who are Dr. Seuss fans. We're going to be talking about the second theatrically released adaptation based off of a Dr. Seuss book, but not the first one. It was technically a live-action film that came out a few years prior, which was Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and then afterwards would be The Cat in the Hat, which came out a few years afterwards. But we're going to be talking about the first animated theatrically released film, and that is Horton Hears a Who.
And before we actually get into it, I think maybe we should probably talk about how we hilariously stumbled upon it, I guess.
Yeah.
So it was Valentine's Day, me and Patricia were in ever so romantic mood, as you can probably imagine. And so we decided to watch a bunch of movies, and we went through all, the typical ones. And we even somewhat came across the Walking with Dinosaurs movie, that really terrible one,
one that had the awful narration, even though that it originally wasn't supposed to have narration, because it was based off of a series of clips of dinosaurs walking around. It was supposed to be really educational.
It virtually had nothing to do with Walking with Dinosaurs.
No, it didn't. It just had a whole bunch of narration just to compile a story. So basically, when people were saying about I wish there was that Fantasia segment, where basically the dinosaurs were roaming around and then they were slowly dying. Land Before Time was the closest equivalent of it. I want to see if we can have a live act, basically an animated movie where the dinosaurs are there and there's no talking. Well, we almost got that with Walking with Dinosaurs, but then they had to go and screw it up. And then Aaron and I were like, you know what? At the first 5 minutes, we were like, no, done.
But we digress. So we came across next Horton Hears a Who, which we thought was. It was going to do with something that we were going to do, which we're doing right now, which is a journey into the blue sky. So we watched it, and so now we're going to tell you about our feelings towards it. So, story is basically, the Dr. Seuss book. So, Horton the elephant is a eccentric jungle teacher. We're helping the younger ones in the jungle, but he comes across a floating speck, and on that speck he finds the city of Whoville, and who basically been led by the Who's. So the mayor, Ned McDodd, who is got a family there, and also it includes other characters like his wife Sally, his 96 daughters, and also his teenage son Jojo, who is basically going to be the person who takes over from him, when he's said and done. But he once Horton takes the speck, and then there starts to be earthquakes and changes in the weather and stuff like that. The mayor finds that something is going on, and but is being shouted down by the condescending chairman, saying that there's nothing going on.
Basically it's it's taking the Jaws approach, in which is you have this major disaster that's going on, and then you have one guy from the government who's basically saying, no, everything's fine, there's nothing to worry about, we're gonna have this huge celebration over in Whoville, and there's nothing to worry about, continue on with the celebrations, don't listen to what he's saying.
Yeah. And then on the other side, you got Horton, who is trying to convince everybody that there is a living thing on this speck, or many living things on this speck, and but this is challenging the power of this very sour kangaroo, who basically dominates over the whole lot, and she believes that this whole talk of the speck having life on it is challenging her authority, and she doesn't like that one bit.
Nope.
Yeah. So by the way, she's crazy in this movie. This kangaroo.
She is.
So but we'll get.
She's basically what we were describing as a kangaroo version of Karen.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, the one thing I will say about, the first of all, I think about the animation in this movie is that, it is pretty much on spot with what Blue Sky are capable of doing.
Yes.
And it's...
I mean, that's the thing that we've been praising about Blue Sky at this point in time, is that their animation is, like, really colorful, and they've only continued to they've gotten better and better as time went on. I mean, they started a little bit rough with Ice Age, but the story is what made it up. But it kind of, like, went into a slightly downward slump with storytelling and in favor of more animation. I mean, robots was just all over the place, and the meltdown was just a downgrade of what we saw in the first movie. So now we have Horton Hears a Who, which is their first adaptation based off an existing property. And Dr. Seuss already set a very high standard to his animation because a few decades prior, he worked with his he worked with his buddy Chuck Jones, where they did a lot of those, animated TV specials, like How the Grinch Stole Christmas, The Lorax, and Horton Hears a Who is no exception. It did get an animated adaptation around the 70s. So, after Seuss passed away in 1990, his widow took over the estate, and basically, she wanted to do more adaptations based off of his books, starting off with How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which apparently I think she was like pretty satisfied with, especially with Ron Howard. He basically took homages not only from the book, but also from the Chuck Jones animated special as well, and he dedicated that film to his mother, which passed away during the production of the movie. She was not, however, satisfied with The Cat in the Hat, starring Mike Myers. So much so that when she heard about, hey, Blue Sky wants to do a adaptation on Horton Hears a Who, she was like, okay, yeah, I think it'll definitely be a lot better than Cat in the Hat, that's for sure.
Definitely sure. Definitely certain on that.
Yeah, in fact, this was at the point in time in which Cat in the Hat was so terrible that she basically said, no more live action versions ever again. So this was like the make or break deal. If Horton Hears a Who flopped in the box office, there was going to be no more adaptations afterwards.
I don't think it was even the fact that it was live action. I think it was poorly written, and there was not much they could really do in the live action setting. So
yeah,
it really struggled.
I understand where they're coming from. It's like, I can understand a film adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I mean, here's the thing. I've always been a person who was very sketchy about the Ron Howard version. Jim Carrey as the Grinch, I just felt was a little bit too over the top, but the movie has since grown on me, and especially since I've recently watched the Illumination version with Benedict Cumberbatch as the Grinch, and that movie was just so unbelievably generic that I was like, you know what? At least Ron Howard tried to do something a little bit more faithful to the book, as opposed to just putting in a whole bunch of generic and stereotypical plots that you would see in any other animated movie. Thanks, Illumination, for ruining it. Anyway, but that's beside the point. Yeah. So, Horton Hears a Who was the first animated adaptation, and I'm sure that there was a lot riding on it because, after Seuss's widow said, I don't want to see any more live action adaptations of my late husband's work after the disaster that was The Cat in the Hat, she said, okay, we're going to go into animation next. And yeah, it turned out to be surprisingly really good.
Yeah. So, just going into the voice cast over this. So, Jim Carrey obviously is Horton the Elephant.
Of course he is. I mean, after the betrayal of the Grinch, it's not too much of a surprise that he would come back and do another Dr. Seuss character.
Yeah, and also the one great thing about Jim Carrey is that he can definitely bring a character to life in animated form. Just through the portrayal, just through how his voice goes.
Yeah,
recently he's been doing Dr. Robotnik over in Sonic the Hedgehog, and he's been doing a pretty good job in
he's done a phenomenal job, yes. Yeah. And he even said himself that I know for the most part that he is planning on his retirement because he's just so fed up with Hollywood, but he said if a role is really, really good, like what he did with Robotnik, where he did it for his kids and he did it for a lot of other people, then yeah, he said, okay, with only those exceptions, I'll come back to to do these roles, but for the most part, I'm pretty much fed up.
Yeah. To be fair, like, I mean, any other like Sonic adaptations, I think, who knows? Maybe like, maybe Jim Carrey's like, portrayal of Dr. Robotnik might be like, every other Dr. Robotnik, coming forward, maybe.
Maybe, but in the meanwhile, we're talking about this role. So yeah, Jim Carrey's portrayal as Horton is a lot different than the Grinch because they're two completely different characters.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But it's kind of funny because it takes place in Whoville, and that's where the Grinch lives. I thought that there maybe would have been a little cameo. That would have been really clever because the Grinch lives up on the mountains of Whoville, which means that, yes, in canon, the Grinch is just as small as the Who's in Whoville. So I just thought that was actually pretty funny. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, but that aside, yeah, Jim's portrayal as Horton is the complete opposite. He's very eccentric, he's very clumsy, he's very sweet, and, he can have a lot of quirky moments here and there, but then again, that's Jim Carrey, especially that crazy over-the-top anime scene.
Well, I think the great thing about it is that he knows, when it comes to big-hearted characters, like, when they're cold, he knows how to play them cold. When they're big-hearted, he knows how to play them big-hearted.
Yes.
Like, you can definitely tell there's a tone shift.
Yeah, his portrayal of the Grinch, it definitely does come across as a bit cold, but at the same time, he puts in a lot of, like, really snarky humor in there, whereas Horton, his humor is very more like slapstick, but at the same time, he has a lot of like, crazy snips at some of the characters and a lot of one-liners, which is to be expected. I sometimes
wonder, like, if that was what was missing from when he played Ebenezer Scrooge in, like, in the Christmas Carol when he did that. If he did Jim Carrey's Christmas Carol, if you remember when he did that,
yeah.
Like, I wonder if that was what was missing for Stooge's, Scrooge's performance, Uncle Scrooge. Jim
Carrey as Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck, that would be something.
Yeah, sorry, David Tennant, you did a good job in the 2017 version, but we're gonna bring Jim Carrey in here.
Good grief, that'd be the day. But I think that's the one thing I will say about Jim Carrey's performance in Horton Hears is that it's right on spot.
Yes.
And I can't find. Also, same thing with Steve Carrell as well. Like, he played Ned McDodd, and like, you're hanging. When he's in the minute trying to like save Whoville, and you're hanging like on his performance, and he knows.
Yeah, absolutely.
He knows that the world's end is coming, and like Steve Carell is known more for like comedic roles, but when he's thrown.
What do you mean? I mean, like, he's known for a lot of comedy. I mean, he was Michael Scott in The Office, which is one of the funniest sitcoms ever made.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, like, when he's thrown into a movie where there's peril, like, you wouldn't think that's kind of like where, obviously, there's been peril in The Office. No, don't get me wrong. Like, of course there's been stuff like that.
Yeah,
but, I mean, like, he knows when to serious it up, and he knows when to basically start being comedic. And I think he does that very well in this role, I think, in playing this character.
Yeah, he sounds like if Michael Scott was having, like, a really hectic day over at The Office.
Yeah, Carol Burnett's portrayal as Sour Jane Kangaroo.
Yeah, she's actually great, by the way. I mean, it's Carol Burnett. What do you expect? I mean, she's like one of the greatest female comedians of all time.
Exactly, yeah, but even this, like, when she's like, when she becomes like, Karen-like in this role, like, when she's trying to, when she's very manipulative in the way that, she delivers that speech of like, having to turn like all the animals against Horton. Like, that was definitely a moment in the movie where, you felt like there was just this massive shift. In the final third.
She expects everything to be, everything in order. It's like, this is the way we've always had it, and then you come along and you're manipulating everybody, and Horton, that's not accepted, and we're gonna take this, this little weed, and we're going to crush it, and we're gonna prove to you that the people in Whoville do not exist. It's all in your mind. So yeah, she wants control.
Yeah, there's one thing I will say that will go against it in the voice acting is that Will Arnett playing Vlad Velikov, and like it's the Americana, here's the evil Russian baddie, and
that's even more uncomfortable nowadays.
It is definitely, yeah, I just think that's like here's Will Arnett doing a Russian accent for this vulture that's trying to do the sour kangaroos like bidding and trying to basically get Horton's flower, and so
basically she's being controlled by Sour Jane, saying, I need you to grab this flower so that we can be able to bring order back into the forest and the jungle, and watch over the kids because they're listening to Horton just going all out with this whole Whoville thing.
Yeah. And so also Seth Rogen's in this as Morton, which I think, I mean, again, a great performance. I think.
It is a great performance. Yeah, I mean,
the one thing I will say about this particular, Dr. Seuss movie is that we can definitely say like the casting is appropriate. I think for all the characters that are in here, and they know exactly what they've been given good direction as well.
Yeah, unlike in Robots, in which you hear the celebrities, but you just hear the celebrities as the characters. You don't hear the characters because they're just overshadowed by the celebrity performances.
I think there's another movie I think that's coming up down the line, which I think probably does that worse than the probably Robots.
Oh, absolutely, yes. But we'll get to that
later. Yeah. And that's also a Dr. Seuss property as well.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, that's just naming a few. I mean, like, Selena Gomez is somewhere in this movie, but I didn't really notice her all that much, really.
I mean, this is like young Selena Gomez. This is like when she was in the Disney Channel, Selena Gomez. This is Wizard of Waverly Place, Selena Gomez. This is not like Selena Gomez, the famous singer that we know of her today.
Yeah. So, again, like, because Audrey Geisel was so dissatisfied with 2003 Cat in the Hat, like, she said no more live-action movies, and basically now here we are with Blue Sky, basically taking this on.
Yeah,
I'm quite surprised, actually, because, I mean, Robots wasn't, like, all universally well-received, so, like...
I mean, it was received very well. In fact, it made a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
guess Robin Williams basically took it over the line.
Exactly, yeah. It's like I said before in the Robots discussion, it was a movie that had a bit of a cult following, but I mean, it does have its mixed reactions from a lot of critics and fans. But anyway, I guess the reason why that,
Well, it's interesting that she went with Blue Sky, and there was pics. I mean,
the reason why is because Chris Meledandri asked Seuss's widow to see if they would get the rights for it. So it was all a matter about, like, they asked first. I'm sure that...
Oh, right. Okay,
yeah, because in 2008, let's see, what was DreamWorks and Pixar doing?
You would imagine, like, something like Dr. Seuss, like, it's a very... You imagine, like, Pixar, you would imagine, like,
Pixar doesn't do adaptations on anything.
I thought maybe Disney or maybe, like, some of the other movie theaters might have, like, tried to pick this up.
Disney were just starting to get out of their doldrums. They released Bolt that year, and then a year later, they went back to the drawing board by doing The Princess and the Frog. So, yeah, they were in their direction. And then, what was it? Like, was the first Kung Fu Panda was what DreamWorks was doing at the time?
I'm actually not too sure. Like,
DreamWorks and Pixar were doing other stuff. So... I think that for the most part, with the fact that Chris Meledandri basically said, "Hey, Mrs. Geisel, I was wondering if Blue Sky Studios would like to do an adaptation based off of your late husband's work. Is it live action? No. Okay, good.
Okay. Well, mind you, also another smart move that they made, like Audrey got close up and personal with this movie.
Yes,
so,
she did.
She got to basically have a say in basically everything that was going on. Which I think, great. By the way, was something that we talked about previously, I'm sure, in an episode of Arun and Patricia, by the way, plug. But, I think, I think I've always said that if you give the original creator, or at least, give people who are close to the situation, a decent amount of control and a decent amount of say in how it's going to get, portrayed onto the big screen, then I think it's going to do well.
Yes.
And, yeah.
And I was right, by the way. Kung Fu Panda would have been the movie that DreamWorks would have been releasing. So out of the three movies, I think that, let's see, between Bolt and Horton Hears a Who and Kung Fu Panda and Pixar, 2008. So Cars came out a year before then. So I think that would have been WALL-E that would have been out around that time. Yeah, I think it was WALL-E. So, yeah, and between all of those movies, that's really hard to say which one actually came on top at the end.
Yeah. The soundtrack, I think, is really not really much to kind of like
not
go
really
away
that
with.
much.
Really.
I mean,
they do like a version of Can't Fight the Feeling.
Yeah,
which,
that's pretty much. I mean, there was some other stuff in there, but
they did.
Can't Fight This Feeling was the one that I remember.
They did Quickie. They did the Swingville Sachet, Agua Maleo, and also the Blue Diambe. Besides that,
the Blue Danube. Yeah.
Yeah. Besides that, there's not really much of a film score really to be found here.
Not really, but to be fair, I think they just wanted to focus more on the story and the animation and the comedy, as opposed to just like a whole bunch of music like DreamWorks would do.
Funnily enough, there was like enough soundtrack to make an hour-long soundtrack. So that was released. So an hour's worth of soundtrack. But unfortunately, it's I can't really remember much of the music.
No,
really.
I don't remember really much. That's been a theme here. It's like every time that we talk about a Blue Sky movie, other than like, wow, they used a song from Oliver, and okay, they just decided to put in this random song for some reason because I guess it was popular. Other than that, I don't really remember too much of the music from Blue Sky, other than like the music from the first Ice Age, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So, critical reception, 80% of Rotten Tomatoes so far.
Yeah, and it's the only, think about this. This is the only Dr. Seuss adaptation that has a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, which is kind of start to think about really when Dr. Seuss was in the imaginations and also in the nostalgia of so many people. And so you would have thought that they would have treated this as carefully and as detailed as possible. But oh my God, the Cat in the Hat basically threw.
The Cat in the Hat ruined it.
It basically, it's just coughed up a hairball on top of that thing, really. It was such a shame.
Oh my God, it was awful.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there'll ever be a Cat in the Hat movie ever again. After what happened there.
It's like the Super Mario Brothers movie all over again. It's like, yeah, we're not going to touch that with a 100-foot pole.
At least not for 20 years, at least.
But I think Grinch is becoming much more of a proper cash cow for adaptations, because Illumination did it again just recently, where they were like, oh, okay, we're gonna have another Grinch, even though that we already had a live action Grinch. But what about the animated Grinch? No, we already had the Chuck Jones version, but we need a theatrical one. Okay, well, here you go. And it just turned out to be just as disappointing. Yeah, according to Rotten Tomatoes, the Grinch Stole Christmas, the 2000 version, is 49%, and the Dr. Seuss Grinch is only 59%, which is, yeah, Cat in the Hat is even way lower than that. And the Lorax, we don't even want to talk about the controversies that the Lorax did in terms of its advertisement and stuff like that. But we're not doing an Illumination podcast. We will not be covering that. So yes, it's kind of sad to think that this is the only adaptation based off of a Dr. Seuss film. A book that's not one of the Chuck Jones version, by the way, that is fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. And one of the two films that is of like over 80%.
Yeah. So, Horton and View, it basically was released, back in 2008. It made $297 million at the box office, and so it definitely covered its $85 million budget. And so, I guess you could say, in that case, it was a success. But mind you, if this released today, I don't think it would be considered that much of a success, really. There seems to be a lot more, demand for movies to basically, make, far more,
Yeah,
money
exactly.
Than that.
You need to, Lightyear made over $200 million right before it was released on Disney Plus, and that was considered to be underperforming.
Exactly, but then look at the budget that basically came out for. I think how much did it cost to make Lightyear? I'm sure.
Yeah, at least double that what maybe Horton Hears a Who got
exactly,
produced.
Yeah, but I guess in some instances, in 2008, I guess you could say that was a success, but at the same time, I think if it came out in there seems to be this expectation that movies need to break $1 billion at the box office or something like that, in order to be phenomenally successful.
Yeah, but that wouldn't happen until Minions came out.
Exactly, yeah, but I think now that seems to be kind of oh hey, you break $1 billion, your movie is super successful and everything.
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a shame that Blue Sky never got another chance to do another Dr. Seuss adaptation, because after this, they would give it to Illumination, which I know Illumination was really, really big with Despicable Me and then eventually Minions, but Lorax and the Grinch were just such a disappointment. And, Horton Hears a Who, yes, it's true that maybe there are some parts of it that are a little stupid, but hey, I think that what it makes up for, its flaws is that it's very humorous and, it's very funny and it's very colorful. Jim Carrey and Steve Carell do amazing performances. It goes a little bit off the wall, especially with that anime scene where Horton basically imagines himself as the hero who saves the Whoves in Whoville by portraying as this shonen protagonist. And then we have, the flower basically speaking out of sync, saying, Horton is the greatest hero ever, y'all. Mm-hmm. So Yeah, I would say that if you are going to see an adaptation based off of a Dr. Seuss book, this is the one that I would recommend for a theatrical film. I would just see the Chuck Jones stuff
Yeah.
first.
In regards to awards, I mean, like, it was nominated like 5 times for an Annie Award, but didn't win any of them.
Nope.
Which was a shame, really. But
I mean, I'm sure it was probably really overshadowed by stuff like Kung Fu Panda.
I guess, but best animated effects, best character animation in a feature production, best character design in an animated feature production, best music in an animated feature production, and best writing in an animated feature. Didn't win any of them.
Nope.
And it was nominated for 5. To be fair, it won an ASCAP award, which was top box office film, so it did win that. And it also was John Powell also won it for Bolt Hancock and also Jumper as well. So he won it for a multitude of things.
Yeah, he won it for a multiple reasons.
Yeah, and also it was nominated for a Golden Trailer Award, a IMMCA Award, a Golden Reel Award, and also OFCS Satellite and Young Artist Award. So I mean, it definitely raised the attention of definitely the award giving public at least.
Yeah, sure. And as for like Dr. Seuss fans and as for animation fans, it also has a bit of a cult following as well. I mean, especially since none of the other adaptations based off of a Dr. Seuss book had gotten any acclaim. I mean, sure, people do watch, the Ron Howard adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas every year because they always air it on TV every year. And recently they've done that for the Illumination Grinch, but it's a Christmas. That's to be expected. But yeah, I'm just really sad that nobody really talks about this adaptation anymore. I really think that it should get more attention.
Yeah. One of the deeper meanings of Horton Hears Who, I think, that people really come away from this movie is that a person's a person no matter how small.
I mean, that's what the message of the book was.
Exactly. But I think, to replicate that a bit in movie form, I think is also important too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was basically the moral that Dr. Seuss wrote in terms of he wanted to showcase that everybody is important no matter who they are and no matter how insignificant that they are. Various interviews from Dr. Seuss had harbored on the fact that he wrote this book after World War II when he saw a lot of people treating the Japanese really badly during the war. And, especially when Americans had put them onto the camp settlements. And so he basically compared the Who's to the Japanese and basically Horton as like the one who is trying to help them out. And he actually dedicated this book to a friend of his who was Japanese.
Yeah, but Horton Hears Who, it's said to have many. It actually has many political and social messages as well.
I mean, that's pretty much a lot of his books. They do have a lot of political messages. I mean, there's like the Lorax, which have like
today he will basically be condemned by the right for like wokery and things like that. It so infuriates me when you basically get media with good messages in them and like all of a sudden they have to be picked apart and in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, oh, Star Trek is introducing woke cultures. That was there from the beginning. Oh, Marvel's introducing woke cultures. That was there from the very beginning.
Oh, no, Dr. Seuss is introducing woke culture.
That was there from the beginning.
Yeah, it's pretty much part of your nostalgia in you didn't make any complaints about it then. So
or maybe you just didn't get it the first time, or you didn't even get it at all, and you were just overshadowed with the fact that, hey, these are great stories.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, another thing that people have actually been asking about as well, is the religious, meaning behind Horton Hears Who, which is kind of surprising, really. Although God is never mentioned, Horton Hears Who explores the concept of a faith in a larger, unseen being. First, McDodd is the only one able to actually communicate with Horton, but so the other Who's think that's the marriage delusional, but then obviously he's proven wrong. So there's a bit of religious messaging also, I think, in Horton Hears
That's
Who
very
as well.
interesting, considering that wasn't in the book.
Yeah, exactly. So, but in the movie, it's
in the movie it is, but not in the book. And I guess they needed to just add more material other than, oh, Horton hears something. Oh, this flower has Who's. The jungle's dangerous. He takes it with him. He takes it over to safety. The end. I guess they just needed to add some more stuff to that.
Yeah. So if anyone's wondering how small the Who's actually are, apparently they are microscopic. According to this, so which is really scary to think about. Without mind you, I guess you could say that in the context of the universe that we live in right now. We're pretty small compared to everything else in the wider galaxy.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's like what was it, like that Animaniacs song? It's like it's a great big universe, and we're all really puny. We're all about tiny specks as the size of Mickey Rooney. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that as well. You know, we're just everything is huge, but when we see about how we are in comparison, we're just really small.
Mm-hmm. And on that thoughtful note, I guess we can say we end the episode. But,
yeah, and I would say to you guys, if you have not seen the movie, please check it out on Disney Plus. It'll be well worth it.
Exactly, and so this is one of the very few good Dr. Seuss movies that's actually out there.
And actually, wow, I mean, the first movie since Ice Age where we were able to say, that was actually worth my time. I want to recommend it to people who haven't checked it out.
Hey, babe, guess where we're going back to?
More Ice Age.
Yeah. Well, until then, for In Search of the Blue Sky, take care and bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Or Journey to the Blue Sky. I should always,
You know what? I think that because we know that we're going to be talking about Blue Sky, Blue Sky stuff with more Ice Age. It's like, I think we're just like tired out. It's like, come on, just give it a break.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.